Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Garret Schellenhammer.
And what movie are we going to overanalyze this week?
Where'd You Go Bernadette?
So, based on the best-selling book by Maria Semple, directed and partly written by Richard Linklater as well, the character Bernadette, played by Cate Blanchett, hates people, hates leaving the house, and more than anything, she hates the other parents at her daughter Bee's school. When she disappears, it is Bee's mission to find out where she has disappeared to and what really happened to her. That's not a good... It's like... I couldn't find a good summary of this movie, and I didn't feel like writing my own. Sorry, guys. So we'll kind of catch you up on plot as we go along. What did you think of this movie?
I absolutely love this movie.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so interested. Tell me more.
So I've read the book.
You did read the book?
Yes.
Oh, no. Okay. I mean, that's fine. I just thought we were going to have the opinion of someone who didn't read it and who did read it, but I didn't. I did end up reading the book as well.
Oh, interesting. I had read the book a long time ago, so I haven't read it recently. But I was so enthralled to see how they were going to tell the story.
Me too.
Because the book is based on a third person, the daughter.
Yeah, the book is like the daughter and then like correspondence. She's like got emails and school reports and everything. So it's, I guess, epistolary is the word style, which is not my favorite for a book, to be frank.
No, it was just, that's why I was looking forward to seeing how they were going to do it. I thought there'd be a lot of like voiceovers over Cate Blanchett and stuff like that, but this was a really well done, acted out fully character development movie.
Okay.
And I enjoyed the Cate Blanchett. I was enthralled with the entire movie. We can get to that a little bit more. But I thought like it did a good job of encapsulating human emotion and really trying to convey how people process things super differently and unique, but at the same time can come to a conclusion that is exactly identical. So I was just enthralled with the movie. I thought the acting was fun. I thought the writing was really good. I literally loved Cate Blanchett in this movie. I thought she threw her heart and her soul into this, and like being there every step of the way with her and just kind of going through this journey and feeling her emotions through the screen. I just loved it. I loved it. So
I thought she was great. I did not like it. But to be frank, I didn't like the book either. Yeah. And I just felt like at the end of the day, the portrait of the woman they were trying to create didn't add up to me psychologically. Like, I didn't feel like the person she was, and as a slow reveal to find out that she's had a great deal of personal tragedy, and how that led to, like, where she was at the moment.
No.
It didn't seem to ring true somehow.
The book, I think, does a little bit better job of illustrating that she's got some more probably instability in her life. The movie, I agree, I don't, especially from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, I'm just really curious.
It doesn't look like, I mean, they basically kind of just blow over the fact that, like, you know, they like, oh, you have an adjustment disorder or whatnot. I'm like, oh, actually, she looks a little bipolar, but the movie portrayed her as very bipolar because she goes in these huge swings of mania.
Right.
And then is very, like, dull and depressed. But it kind of was just like, she's an awkward person in the movie. And, like, would be a better explanation than, like, there's something psychologically wrong with her. Because nothing she actually did was psychologically incorrect or wrong. Or, like, she just was kind of meandering through a world with some poor choices and poor responding. But it's not like, I hate when we jump to, like, oh, you made one poor choice. There must be something terribly wrong with you psychologically. And I didn't get on that boat. I saw it with my friend, and he was kind of like, he said the same thing. He was like, I didn't feel like she was really all that bothered or, like, psychologically unstable or whatnot. And, like, to the point where they want to put her in a mental institution. And I was like, well, that's not the step we would take immediately. She's not at a self-harm to herself.
Right. I think, so in terms of just the plot line, I think one of the things, so, okay, let me make an overarching statement first. So in the book, the title, Where'd You Go Bernadette, operates on two levels. in the movie, it basically only operates on one. The mystery of where she actually went is like solved immediately. Like there's no mystery, whereas you spend a lot of time in the book trying to figure out like if she's still alive.
Right.
And then there's a very suspenseful search for her by her daughter, which they just cut out of the movie. So then the Where'd You Go Bernadette has to operate on the more sort of like metaphysical level of, here's a woman who had won a MacArthur Genius Grant for architecture, had the world at her feet, and then has disappeared, not only from the public eye, but from herself, from any sense of creating anything, to the point where they live in this really scary derelict house, which it still looked kind of charming and held together in the movie despite the plant. And I thought that was problematic. Well, in the terms of like, to just finish out the thought, like one of the things I think you realize is so psychologically messed up for her, but also for her husband, who's completely let off the hook in the movie, is that they're living in this house that's quite literally falling apart around their ears. Like it should be condemned. Like it's not safe to live in. And no one seems to notice.
But I think that's part of the metaphor of the house. And this is what I took from the house. So, again, just to kind of flesh out the plot a little bit. Architectural genius in her early 20s, wins a MacArthur grant, starts a project called, she finishes one complete project first, a bifocal house, which is all got bifocals in all of its frames and cross beams and everything. It's beautiful done. But then she starts on another project called the 20-Mile House, where she only builds house with materials sourced from 20 miles around her.
Right.
And she's almost finished with this, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing. And she, like, used the MacArthur grant to kind of, like, stabilize and build this. And then it comes through from a rich TV show host, and he buys it secretly so he can tear it down. So, yeah.
So in the book, they're having a long-standing feud. And the movie, they kind of just say... It's very weird, and I felt like that part was mishandled in terms of how devastating a moment that was for her to see all that work just disappear overnight.
Literally destroyed.
Yeah.
But I think, so after that time, she left California, and then they moved to Seattle for her to get a fresh start or whatever.
And because he's like this super genius who's had this amazing TED Talk and gets hired by Microsoft. I say this because I'm going to nitpick about that later. Go ahead.
Well. I also want to nitpick about his software in the movie, but that's... but she then is so devastated, so why ever buy something new? Why make something great if it's going to be torn down in the end? Why not have something that's already broken so I won't be upset when it gets torn down? I think she knew she's living in a condemned space. I think she knows that it's a terrible place and she probably shouldn't be living there. But she's also turned like pieces of it into art at the same time. And so it's just like still developing inside the house. But the overall structure is a metaphor for her, which is broken. Inside, she's still got this creative little pockets. She's broken. And why start something if it's going to be just ripped down later? So I think the house is meant to be drab, dreary, on the edge of condemned, like not...
No, I know that it is, but it just sort of... It is, to me, it is the one of the main things in terms of like how you know these people have gone really far off the deep end is because they're living in this house and they've sort of ceased to notice what a problem this house is.
Anybody living in the house. I mean,
right, again. And
any
so
adults,
then the husband, you're like, what the heck is this guy's deal that he doesn't even, like, when he like wakes up to the problem, they're like so far gone, and it's a little hard to deal with the husband's character. He is more of a villain in the book than he is in the movie.
He was very apathetic in the movie. I didn't feel like... I would literally... There were times like, oh, I forget you're here. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't... Which I don't know if that's just the actors... what's his name?
Billy Crudup?
I don't know if that's his, like, go-to. I don't think I've seen a ton of stuff with him in it, so...
Almost fake. He was the rock star in it. But,
like, I think... Or if he was trying to convey what it's like that he is technology. He is the representation of technology himself. Bland, to the point, overarching, like, just black and white thinking. That's all he is. And I couldn't tell if that was... And this is why I want a little bit more from him, because, like, if you would given him a couple lines like that and really engrossed that in there, I think people would have seen him in a different light and been like, wow, he's just like the robots he builds.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't know what to make of his character in the book, and I didn't know what to make of his character in the movie. Like, I think he was poorly written, and it's not clear. Again, I mean, I get it's from the kid point of view, but it's not clear what kind of relationship they really have at the end of the day. Like
the dad and daughter, or the dad and anybody.
The dad and anybody, but particularly them as a couple, as a married couple.
Right.
I did notice that despite the fact that this guy is extremely high up in Microsoft, all their devices were Apple devices, which was very annoying product placement. I was like, they have an iPad? Really?
I would expect somebody who is a tech geek to have more tech in their house.
Yeah, agreed.
Period. Whether it's Apple or Microsoft or whatever. But like, the only tech thing we see him doing in the whole movie is like uploading some data from his Fitbit. And I was like, what? This doesn't...
Yeah.
And it just kind of was like, but I did enjoy every time you saw him, everything was crisp, everything was clean, his shirts were all pressed, like he always walked in straight lines, he never took like curves and detours, he was very straight and robotic throughout the whole thing, versus Bernadette is all very flowy and crooked and like big circles and like always a little bit of skew in the hair, and I was like, I loved that like symbolism between both of them. But I just, at the end of the day, the dad, I mean, the book does a much better job of like talking about how they have a relationship and they trust their daughter. But in the movie, it looks like they just let their daughter kind of run wild and rampant and do whatever she wants at 15 years old.
Yeah, and so one of the things that the book is showing you, and the movie is trying to show you like these two parallel narratives. How you can see everything that Bernadette does as like sign of like a psychotic break, right? Or like how actually she sort of has all of it logically makes sense in context, and without context, it looks crazy. In context, it doesn't. And so you get to this moment of the story where they want to put her in a mental institution, and she kind of realizes like, oh yeah, if you didn't know why I did any of those things, this would all look totally crazy town.
Right. But I didn't feel like the movie captured that.
No, I didn't. And I thought the one of the biggest letdowns to me is the movie does like a parallel cross-cutting scene where she is telling her story to her old mentor that she's meeting up with after a long time. And he is telling her story to a professional psychiatrist. And they jump back and forth between those two. And better writing would have drawn that parallel really crisply between her point of view and his of the same events as his point of view. The
same event, but like this is what she's doing that's crazy,
and they just didn't have that quite down. I will say, for like the 5 seconds that he was in the movie, Lawrence Fishburne, he was just so good, and he was just like this. He just like walked on screen, and he just had this incredible like warm presence of love and light, and I'm like, wow, you don't really see that from him. He usually plays a lot of troubled characters. So it was just really a delight to see him on screen. And I agree with you that Cate Blanchett did everything she could with this part.
I will be very surprised if she doesn't. I don't think she needs to win, don't get me wrong. I don't think I'd be surprised to see her nominated for some sort of award for the portrayal of this character, because she spot on hit like kooky, awkward, like fun verge of like, I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And she didn't really care about what was going to happen next either. I thought she encapsulated like what the movie was trying to portray, not necessarily the character Bernadette, but like what the movie had written.
Right.
And I thought she did a great job of literally running the range of emotions from anger to sadness to happiness to joy to obsession to paranoia. Like, I mean, she had run the gambit of these emotions. I just thought she did a wonderful job. And it wasn't like a serious kind of acting either. It was a joyful, witty, playful annoyance acting, which I really enjoyed.
I mean, I will say this, it was kind of out of left field for me, speaking of warmth. Like, Cate Blanchett usually plays, like, these very cold people, and I just don't like cold people, and I don't tend to like actors that favor that role, and this was just her most vibrant, warmest self on screen, and it has really changed my feeling about Cate Blanchett.
Yeah.
For how much she captured the joy of this part. I will say one of the things, so they leave out a lot of subplots, and they really, another reviewer said this, and I totally agreed. They really botched the scene with the mud avalanche. And one of the parts of the book that I thought was kind of the funniest was like the fallout from them, and then getting letters from the school psychologists as to how they're supposed to deal with their traumatized children. So it needed to look scarier when it actually happened, but also B, like the hysteria over it needed to be at 11 and it was at like a 2.
Yeah.
But so Kristen Wiig, they didn't give her enough to do, and I actually thought that subplot of, so Kristen Wiig's character is like this, you know, the uber PTA mom who, unlike Bernadette, her kid's a total F up, and she's studiously trying to avoid that her kid's a juvenile delinquent while trying to like be the uber mensch at this school and run everything and do everything. And one of the reasons Bernadette ends up looking so crazy is because this woman is literally manufacturing lies about Bernadette. And then it ends up being her, which they do try to have this connection in the movie. It ends up being her having her sort of come to Jesus moment and taking a hard look at reality instead of the fiction that she likes to live in, as being the thing that, the connection that she makes with Bernadette. And they like jettisoned all of that from the movie. And then again, that's where I think the central theme of how, you know, motherhood, while being incredibly fulfilling, becomes such an all-consuming role for so many women that they lose themselves into that sphere to the exclusion of everything that they were before. And I just thought by not having that plot in there, they didn't tell that parallel story well enough. And then they sort of lost one of the big elements to the theme.
Yeah, I was really disappointed with Kristen Wiig's character when I heard that she was going to be playing the Nat parent, the angry like antagonist. I was super excited because I've seen Kristen Wiig like flip out in tons of other movies, and I was waiting for this big like with you. I was kind of waiting for this big freak out and like everything, and their fight was really not a fight at all. Like if my whole house had just been flooded by a hillside of sludge, mud, and rain and dirt, and it had come through, broken everything in my house, ruined one of my biggest events of the year, I would lose my mind.
Yeah. And
she was just kind of like, I am very upset. And I was like, no, yell, be loud, like be in her face. Like, and so I was kind of disappointed in that, but there just wasn't the writing for the movie. There was not a lot that Kristen Wiig could have done with that character other than like, they wrote her as like they only gave her the snippy lines.
Right.
Versus I feel like if they would have wrote her a more full character of being like snippy, but then like trying to show her being compassionate to her son and trying to be like, you know, what's going on, see the struggle she was going through with her son as well, versus just because it's the son never speaks in the movie, and it's just kind of like we see cut scenes of him like smoking weed and cut scenes of him like laughing about his mom with his friends and da-da-da-da-da. And I was just kind of like, there's nothing she had the emotional range she gave to the part, but the part didn't require anything other than like,
yeah.
And one of the best scenes I did think of the movie is Bernadette has run away for the very 10 minutes of the intervention. She's about to be placed in a mental institution. She runs to her neighbor's house. She says, nobody will look for me here. And in that moment, you see Kristen Wiig's face just like sheer confused and panic. And I think that was appropriate for what was happening. But like, I think Kristen Wiig was actually like confused, like, because it didn't make sense in the movie at all. Like, there was no actual tie-in like the book. It was like where she's like standing there in the rain, talking to her, like telling her, I'm messed up. Like, I've had a problem. I really, as a mother, help me protect. And so that But they did have this one cute little, like, banter where they're like, I'll trade you my life for yours. Here's my terrible thing that's messed up. And then it was the cutest part is I think they were comparing, you know, whose life is worse. And then finally, Kristen Wiig is like, all right, I'll take your life only if you throw in the most messed up thing about it, which is this fake assistant that you hired who is actually part of, like, the mafia.
And so that scene actually, again, that was like a great scene, just seeing the two of them interact, and both actresses really brought a lot to that, and you're like, there needed to be more of that. And I guess what I thought was so interesting about this criticism of the movie is that Richard Linklater is kind of known for his big ensemble cast movies. I mean, he does a lot of slice of life, and he does slice of life better than I would say anybody else. Like, but if you think of, like, you know, Dazed and Confused or Everybody Wants Some, like, he's big into the sort of slice of life, big ensemble cast. And here, it was just, like, players who were standing alone and, like, didn't interact, like, he didn't gel them all together very well.
I agree. It felt, and I was talking to somebody who was like, well, didn't you want the movie to be disjointed? I was like, there's a difference between characters being disjointed in their development together and disjointed in terms of cinematography, music, writing, like...
Oh, the music, ugh. There was a lot of, like, very slow piano notes to convey sad emotion. I was like, oh God, this just makes my hair stand on end. I'm just so sick of it.
Yeah, so I thought, like, I agree with you. Like, disjointed in the fact that, like, it wasn't disjointed, it wasn't cohesive. And even the character Bernadette and her daughter are supposed to have the best relationship in the movie. And I thought the young girl did a great job in her acting, but, like, there's no real touching moments besides two in the whole movie between Bernadette and her daughter. And the whole thing about Bernadette is she would do anything for her daughter.
Right.
She literally thinks she is her everything. And so we miss all these, like, good moments that they could have had together showing us why she goes and searches for her mom all the way to Antarctica. Like, why... And I think that's what we miss with the book, too, is... The book is a build-up of this, like, Where Did You Go Bernadette?
Right.
Her daughter is solving clues, trying to piece all this together. We don't have all the information that we got in the movie. So the book, the daughter's really trying to find her. Because she's, like, worried about her and cares about her and wants her mom to, like, be okay.
Right. And again, like, from the perspective of the daughter, you know, she has to go through that moment where you actually see your parents as real people. You know, that developmental step where when she starts digging into who her mom was, like, it seems unclear that she even knew her mother was an architect, like, or knew about, you know, the Bieber bicycle or the other project. You know, it's just like she's learning all these things about who her mother used to be. And it's like her mom has just been, you know, a mom up until she goes on that search. And I agree, like, there doesn't seem their connection... It was fine, but it wasn't... I wish for more development on that character development, where that moment where you start to see the girl switch from viewing Bernadette as just a mom to, like, a real person.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I think we've kind of covered...
Yeah.
The movie itself. I think one of the things that this movie did really well...
Yeah?
Is it taught you never to give up on your passion.
I mean, it made me want to go to Antarctica. That is for dang sure. I was like, that looks cool. Oh, I won't survive the motion sickness. Hopefully I'll get the hell doll that she couldn't get.
No, I really... The book does a great job of this, but the movie, I thought, did it 10 times better. About really encapsulating, like, it's never too late to give up on the passion that you always had and always wanted. And it's, you know, she's 20 years down the line, basically. Yeah. And she's, like... finding her joy again and watching that development. Cate Blanchett Bernadette, the character, snuck onto a, like, workstation in Antarctica to go to another workstation in Antarctica. And, like, the way she interacts with characters in the station, and she's like, I'll do anything. I will scrub floors. I will sand decks. I will pick up the trash. I will, like, do whatever. I was gathering phytoplankton earlier. Like, I will do whatever I need to. And really starts to, for the first time, connect with people. And then the director kind of takes pity on her, and she's like, I looked you up. You're a famous architect. I'm really impressed by you. But what do you got for me? What are you going to do? And she's like, if you go, you're not going to see anybody. You need to be a little antisocial. You need to go periods without exercise or a shower. And you have to really kind of be ready to be alone with your own thoughts. And I thought it was perfect. Bernadette was like, I've been practicing for this for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I've been this miserable person. And maybe that's what I needed to be here, ready for this journey now. But just to and so I thought the most touching part of the movie is when she calls to ask permission from her family.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's calling from a substation in Antarctica to her family. And her family has already found her, so they're waiting in the hall, hearing her go on this long rant about asking for the permission. And I think one of the best lines I also heard was, well, this isn't a message, it's more of a conversation. She wasn't telling them. She really was trying to ask them. And it's just this emotional scene where she's got such vitality and joy in her voice and her hand movements on her hip. And she's you can tell she's thinking through a creative process. And her family is standing right outside the door and they just run in. You can go. You have my permission. Go. And just that, I thought was something that you couldn't ever capture in a book because you can make it up in your own imagination. But I thought the on-screen performance of it just absolutely nailed that. It's never too late to keep your passion.
It's never too late to stick with your passion?
Yeah. It's never too late. Don't give up on your passion.
Don't give up on your passion. It's not too late.
It's never too late. Follow your passion.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. I'm sort of halfway tempted to sort of blame Richard Linklater as, a man and a male writer to not really understanding it's never too late. And the idea of how do you, the age-old, debated a million times question is can women have it all, right? It's how do you be a mother and maintain yourself, right? And that didn't come off great in the movie, but then it didn't come off great in the book either. So it's I can't even, I'm not even going to cast that criticism his way.
Well, and I took that more as if he was technology and she was creativity. Those are just the symbolisms I drew from both of them.
That's interesting. I didn't think of that juxtaposition as him as
the encapsulation of technology, and just giving him at the end of the movie is technology was pulling away. He's I'm going to slow down at work. I'm going to try to be more of this family. I'm going to try to be more, support the creative process of Bernadette. I'm going to give, technology only got me so far, but it missed all these things.
Yeah.
The human potential, the creativity and joy is the thing that he wants to do better on and build upon. And so I kind of looked at it as phases. First 20 years of her life, it was her turn. Then it was a good renaissance, and then technology came along, and so Bernadette's creativity weaned while technology soared, and now technology is again going down while she is in her renaissance. So I really enjoyed the kind of parallels to and you can have creativity and technology at the same time, don't get me wrong, but for the purpose of this movie and this plot, it was nice to kind of see how it's cycling for them and their relationships, and that Bernadette is able to find her creativity again once it was a little less intense from her husband.
So I never really thought about the juxtaposition that way, and I'm glad you brought it up because I'm not sure, because he's also presented as this amazing young genius, right? So in the book he's had this TED Talk that just absolutely took off, So I wouldn't, to me it's not that she's creative and he's not. It's the digital versus analog, right? Her stuff is so hands-on. She makes and creates. She weaves these glasses together to create this installation at the Bieber bifocal. You see her knitting. When she comes back to her creativity in the South Pole, she's knitting again. As a knitter, I'm always super excited to see anybody knitting on camera, especially when they're actually knitting, which she was.
Yeah.
And he's digital, so it's not that he's not creative, right? He's inventing very sort of mathematical, technical problems in this digital world, but so it's he's the digital creativity and she's the analog creativity, and you need to have, I think, both, right? You need to have a better blend of those two things, and that, so this sort of pop mogul, this sort of modern force, and destroys her house. It's how do we find our analog selves again in this digital world?
No, I thought it was a great analogy for the movie and a metaphor, but also really encapsulates this main goal. This is a feel-good movie. it's kind of quirky and funny in the beginning, but really I think probably the last third of the movie is just really enjoyable and really kind of just like pushed the limits of like, I didn't quite take it as a gendered thing. I took it more as an age thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who get older are supposed to like work and have jobs and provide for their families, period of, regardless of gender, excuse me. But like, you're never too old to remember that you're young.
Yeah.
And like, that's what I kind of took it as, is people trying to find themselves in like a, you know, capacity after their parents. And like, how do you reinvent yourself after your kids leave the home?
Right.
Or go to college? Or while they're still home, how do you reinvent yourself at the same time? But I really enjoyed your point about like women can't have it all situation, because I didn't know that I would have taken that away, and probably just because I'm not used to thinking about, you know, having kids myself personally. Yeah, we all know what I mean. Like, women birth the child, and there's a deeper connection. Studies have shown but like I love that, to be like, hey, stick it to the man.
Yeah.
And be like, I can have it all. I can be a good mom. I can be a PTA parent. And by the way, good PTA
also,
parent.
I don't have to be a good PTA parent.
Like, good PTA parent, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be the perfect parent. Good PTA parent is one that's like, I support my kid. Parents as teachers is what they're supposed to be. It's not just like, hey, let me run the program and get the next bake sale going.
Right.
And so I think movies that we've seen recently in the last couple of years that are really kind of push back against that, like, I'm a good PTA mom, have been some of my favorites. Because it's like, I can still be a good mom without fitting your societal standards of, like, the Stepford wife. And I'm still going to do what's best by my kids, regardless of what you think.
I agree. And I do think, like, you know, it's interesting. Speaking of sort of what we're doing right now, to be frank, like, I had hit my late 30s and I was feeling very lost, very much like, okay, you know, my God, like my career is set, my life is set, like everything is fine, but it's like on autopilot. And I was joking that, you know, like I'm having a premature midlife crisis, like, and which is exactly the moment somebody, a friend of a friend, was like, I want to start a podcast. I heard you like movies. And like Movies That Matter came into my life, and I got deeply involved in a creative project. And I said to people at the time, like, so again, this is a digital project. I'm not physically making things. I've physically made a lot of baby sweaters in my time, and they are out there in the world being worn. But, you know, it's a product, and I can point to it, and other people can listen to it. And there was just such a wonderful thing to come into my life as, you know, not at 21 YouTube star. I've met amazing people like you and so many other people that just, you know, I needed, you know, collaborators, and people have come into my life, and I'm like, I got to make this creative thing, and it was so darn fulfilling. Like, it is like the most fulfilling thing to say, like, I put this creative project together, now it's out there in the world for people to see. Like, it really means a lot. And I do think the movie, I do think people do feel like it's too late a lot, and it's not. And I'm not going to throw Grandma Moses in anybody's face, but, you know, it's, if that's the excuse that's holding you back, that is a lie that society has somehow told you, or you learned from somewhere, and it's not true. It's never too late.
I would echo, first of all, I just want to tell you the emotion in this room is real right now. And I know a lot of times on this podcast, I think some of you probably think that we just make stuff up or whatever. But the emotion right now that Nicole is expressing it's tangible. I'm sitting here tearing up because to see, I would never have known about this parallel within you. And to see, like, you using the podcast as your Bernadette. Where'd you go, Nicole? I'm right here. I've been here. I just put my energy into something else. And you have created a wonderful family, I would say. It's not
Absolutely.
Just a group of people. And yeah, we talk about movies and we disagree and whatnot, but like that's just like, I just want to make sure that the space is there, because I think our listeners need to know that, like, this is something, if you watch this movie, I want you to think of this podcast as a metaphor. It's like, we may not always be right. We may be kooky. We may be off the wall. We may not always be agreeing with each other. But at the end of the day, it's about finding your joy, your passion, creating something, taking that analog and making it digital, because you still are analog. You're hands-on. You're going to the movies. You're getting in there in the trenches. You're meeting with people. We're not sitting like via Skype right now.
No, we're both in the same space doing this thing, like interacting with each other.
And I can't, that's a moving experience. And I hope I look back on this podcast in a year, 5 years, 10 years. And I'm like, oh, I remember what I was feeling in that room and how proud and how honored and how all of us listening to the podcast, I've benefited from you being here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been a joy. And actually, while we're going deep dive on movies that matter, somebody asked me a little while ago about the team and all the different people, and I was reflecting there were 2 people that I knew from the team I was friends with before the podcast, and everybody else came in fresh, either because I needed people, because I met a dude at a party once and I knew he really liked movies and I was like, I'm gonna hit that guy up, which is the other Garret. For not having any of us know each other, I always say movie people will find each other wherever we go, but this was just something that, which I think is true of creative projects in general, but more broadly, when you are doing the thing that you love, it draws people into your life. Not to get really silly spiritual on everybody, but when you really do find that joy for yourself, it attracts people into your life. It attracts good things that you just never saw coming too.
Yep.
So, I was really lucky because somebody asked me to do this. I had no idea I would even like podcasting. Having said that, I really like to talk, so go out and find your joy. It's never too late, and it is being creative and making something is so rewarding. Even just the act of it.
I totally agree, and without this, we wouldn't be here today. And so, Where'd You Go Bernadette is a good reminder to continue to follow our dreams, because it's helping change my life. And our podcast, I get random people telling me, I really needed to hear that episode and I didn't know it.
That's beautiful.
And it's and not to toot our own horn, because we could hear our own selves talk every day. We love that. But the things that I don't think are important to other people. And so I hope that if you're listening right now, you take a moment to realize that this podcast isn't just about talking about movies and social justice. This podcast is people trying to bring others together, connect, reach out, and hopefully spread the creativity. Absolutely.
Well, back to our social impact score now that we've given Movies That Matter a 10, clearly. Toot our own horn enough. What would you give Where'd You Go Bernadette?
Overall, I'm going to give it an 8.
Wow.
I think it's the highest movie I've ever rated. And I think for...
More than Boy Erased?
Multi-purpose. I think that this is teaching you to really follow a passion you have, really follow a dream. It's discussing the impact of technology in a digital analog world. Okay. It is really kind of going... we didn't hit on it enough, but I wanted to hit on how the movie really... just because something is awry in your life doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And I think we're so quick to diagnose anymore.
That is a really good point. Yeah.
And I came and wanted to talk about that.
I'm sorry.
This podcast we never have plans, unfortunately. But I think that's really important to note is just because you're different doesn't mean it's wrong. So I think the societal impact score, the 8, highest I'll ever probably give a movie, because 10 would be solving world peace. So yeah, 7, 8. Yeah. Okay.
No, actually, I'm sorry we didn't go down that track, but that is a really good point. Again, everything she does seems crazy out of context, but in context, it's actually not crazy, and she's actually not mentally ill. That's not the thrust of this movie. She's unhappy, but that's not the same thing. And medicating away every negative emotion or therapizing away, either way, is problematic for us. But I'm going to give it a 2 because I just didn't like it.
That's fine. That's what we love it, though.
Recommendations for the week?
So one of my favorite, Find Your Passion, Continue to Live Your Life.
Yay.
Into the Wild.
I've never...
By John, and I'm not going to say his name.
Book or movie?
Book. So I can't say his last name, but it's Jack...
Krakauer.
Sure. I'm going to actually read you back to the original article he wrote.
Oh.
That's the book then spawned off of a larger collection. So
great. We will post that link.
Yeah. So the original article, I think, is very moving. Then the book actually came out of asking him to expand on his experience. I do think the movie is good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it did a good job of really kind of taking a book, but one of my favorite quotes comes from this book, and it is something I think that everybody needs to kind of hear. It says, I read somewhere how important it is in life not necessarily to be strong, but to feel strong, to measure yourself at least once. And it's one of my favorite quotes of all times, and it's not about being strong. You don't need to be the strongest. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to be the most whatever. You need to feel like you need to feel like you've made a difference and you've tried.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm recommending Into the Wild. In this order: the article, the book, then the movie. And then, other feel-good movies that kind of like is about following your passion. I'm a sucker for Dead Poets Society.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
Yes. How about you? Recommendation?
So my recommendation this week, guys, I have avoided this for a while, and I was like, I'm in a show hole, like there's nothing to watch on Netflix. I was like, fine, you keep recommending Madam Secretary. I really don't want to watch the show, and I love it so much. It's very female-centric in terms of, like, not only is she, like, obviously the Secretary of State, there are women who are, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, there are women CIA agents, they're just women, it's like a 50-50 movie where you don't feel like, you feel like there really was, like, blind casting, and they just picked the best people for the part, regardless of gender. What I really like about it, it's a fictional world where problems are solved for the most part by diplomacy. It feels really nice not to always resort to violence.
I think the last recommendation both of us probably have that we're not saying is find your creativity.
Yeah.
Find your joy. Find your passion. Make something. I don't care if it's a popsicle stand for a cell phone holder or...
Learn to knit. You can go to any yarn store, or probably even a Joann and a Michaels, and they will have knitting classes. For people who, men alike...
Well, knitting also lowers anxiety
awesome.
and depression.
It's a great
lowers anxiety and depression symptoms, I should say.
Yeah, it's really great. Something to do with your hands, and you get to make cool things and spend way too much money on yarn if you pick up this hobby. Alrighty. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you can't tell, we really enjoy making it for you.
That's true.
So take a second to leave us a review on iTunes and recommend us to your friends if you liked us. Check out our website at moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. We'll have all the links to things we talked about in the show notes. And if you want to leave a comment for us on our Facebook page or on Twitter at moviesmatterpod. And you can check Twitter next week to find out what movie we're overanalyzing next. And we have got a very exciting fall season. Get psyched for the Oscar bait movies. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.